Robert, what we saw in reaction from some portions of the Spanish media and pundits is this idea, and you used the word, but used the term before, not in that way, that it's not racism, it's Vinicius, right? This is what some people have put out there, including people like, I saw an interview with Donato, who you may remember, former Atletico Madrid and Deportivo La Coruña, who's Brazilian, who is a person of color, ended up playing for Spain, he was very old, and he came out and he said, well, yeah, I used to get it too, but you just move on and you don't react that way because it doesn't help. And I think the world has changed since Donato played. Yes. And if I were Vinicius, I would get annoyed and saying, hey, you old guys, this isn't 1995 anymore, right? However, at the same time, I think the sad thing about this is when you have a game like this, it ends in so much acrimony with, we saw Joselu getting in his face, we saw Rodri, we saw Emerick Laporte afterwards came out and basically mocked him, where, because he came out like, I just want to play, and then he's like, I just want to behave like this. You get a situation where there's going to be a portion of morons who are going to say, if he didn't behave like this, he wouldn't get racially abused. We have to separate those two things.
There's still no excuse for racially abusing a player, whether he behaves poorly on the field or not. You can't do that. But you can see why people don't like the way he acts on the football field. You can see why he would get stick. It shouldn't be racist stick. And
you can see why he's probably so unpopular, I think, with opponents and also with teammates. Now, out of Sergio Ramos, who, people have brought him up as obviously different players. Sergio Ramos, So I was going to say, he never ran at players on the wing and beat them. He used to do that, actually, when he was very, very young. We just remember old Sergio Ramos. But he's another guy who would wind people up, people in this country call it dark arts. So there have been many through the years. And it feels like maybe Sergio Ramos didn't get the stick. So is there a double standard there between Sergio Ramos and Vinicius, for example, when we condemn the behavior on the pitch?
To a certain degree, but I think it was last year when Vinicius started playing really well and started play acting a little bit and started to cause one or two problems on the field and not behaving the way I think he should behave. And I likened him a little bit to Neymar, because Neymar is not a popular character, I wouldn't say. When a lot of people who watch Neymar or watch Messi, everybody loves Messi because he gets up and gets on with it and goes past people and doesn't moan too much, doesn't gesticulate, not very often, with the referee and opponents, whereas Neymar did and tried to roll around on the floor. If he's not careful, Vinicius Junior will be exactly the same as Neymar. And then we won't be talking about his talent, we'll be talking about his reactions to things. Right. Because, as you said, he's a world-class player. He could be the best player in the world at some point. But he's got to make sure he behaves himself and acts in a totally different way. And that's where Ancelotti's got to try and teach him and teach him and teach him. And say, forget all the other stuff. You've got to become the world's best player. And you're only going to do that if you forget all the other antics that go along with it.
I can't speak for Ancelotti, obviously, but I wonder if maybe that might come to a head a little bit next season. Because look, this season, you look at Real Madrid's forwards and you need Vinicius, and you need Vinicius to be central, right? Because there's nobody else other than Rodrigo and Joselu. Next season, if Endrick comes, if Mbappe comes, all of a sudden you have options in how you sort of run the group. You're going to have to make a big call about, again, the Mbappe deal's not done and maybe he won't come. But if he does come, where do you put Mbappe, given, do you put Mbappe through the middle?
Because even if you put Mbappe through the middle, what does he like doing? He'll drift to the left-hand side, exactly what Vinicius Junior was doing.
We've seen Vinicius this season, and I think it's a credit to his hard work and I think to his intelligence that we've seen him adapt in that front too. We've seen him even hold the ball up, do things that, for a guy who was born as a winger, don't necessarily come naturally. I think he's grown a lot in that perspective. So maybe Ancelotti's imagining a front two. Maybe he's imagining some hybrid system where they take turns through the middle. I don't know what he's thinking. But all of a sudden the numbers are going to be such that I don't know that Vinicius is going to get the all-out protection when there will be a bigger dog in town in Mbappe. And when all of a sudden, if he starts getting himself sent off or booked or suspended, or there's always chaos and drama around it. Coaches don't like that, do they?
No, they don't, because that's not something. While you're winning football games, and Real Madrid have been winning football games this year, it doesn't really matter so much. But if you start losing games and other players saying, come on, get a grip of him because he's causing us a problem, it's getting the crowd wound up, the crowd now against us, it's causing us a problem on the football field, then players, as Benzema did when he was at the club, he didn't like some of the things that Vinicius was doing, and that was when he hadn't really reached his potential. So Ancelotti's got a big job to do. What I would say about Vinicius Junior this season is that we'll see what he's capable of on the ball. I've been really impressed by his movement, particularly, as you just said, when he was playing in the centre-forward position. He comes short and spins in behind. Sometimes you don't see that because the ball doesn't go, but his movement off the ball shows great intelligence and a willingness to make those forward runs.
Yeah, that's something that often gets overlooked because people just talk about his speed and athleticism and whatever. But I think he's become a really, really intelligent player. He's taken on more of that responsibility. He's even done more work off the ball. Ancelotti often doesn't ask him to do work off the ball because you like to have the outball to Vinicius. But when it's there, he goes and does it. So I just think if you just cut out this thing with pushing lesser opponents, with winding, with then, or you find a way to do it in a way that's maybe more subtle. I mean, I don't, all forwards, I don't want to go all Ale Moreno here, but all strikers will get cute if they can win a foul, right?
Yeah, of course.
Or almost all of them. There's a way to do it without raising the tension in the game, without making the referee not like you, without winding up the opponent, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where he needs to make the breakthrough.
Yeah.
Basic storyline here, it's too easy to ignore. Endrick and Lamine Yamal. These guys weren't even born when the Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo rivalry started to grow. I thought Lamine Yamal was phenomenal. Oh. With Endrick, obviously spends less time on the pitch, but I'm just struck by how unfazed this man is between the England game and this one. Yeah. What's your take?
Absolutely. I mean, start on Yamal. I've watched him a lot for Barcelona over the course of the last season. And you're just shocked by his ability to go past people, his ability to read the game, the ability to decide when to run past people, when to chop it back onto his left foot and play little 1-2s, when to play a pass. Just is so mature for a player so young, and a great athlete as well. And he's not going to be a player that, be unkind to Michael Owen, a young player that came onto the scene and scored goals, great goals, and was a top class player for England. He relied solely on his pace. Yamal has got great skill, great vision, great awareness, and pace to match as well. So he's going to be a top class player. And I think that probably, I haven't seen quite as much of him, but Endrick's going to be exactly the same. He's a player that has a football intelligence, pace, ability to go past people, everything you want from a top class player.
Do you see him more as a winger or through the middle? Because
I see
he's
him,
a strong boy.
I would see him to start with as a wide player, and then grow into a centre forward. And as we're seeing now, there's lots of, most forwards like to be hybrid centre forwards where they can go through the middle or go wide. We see it with Mbappe, we see it with Vinicius Junior now, we see it with Rodrigo to a certain degree. Even when Ronaldo was playing at his very best, he still, even when he was at centre forward, he'd drift out to the left wing, and when he was left wing, he'd drift into the centre forward position. Right. So I think you need to be a player that can go wide or play through the middle, which I'm sure both those players can.
All right, a word on Spain. Because when I saw that lineup, he made a bunch of changes compared to the game at the weekend. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is interesting because, Nico Williams, Dani Olmo, and Lamine Yamal, right? So you've got the 16-year-old phenom, who I assumed was only going to play 45 minutes because Barcelona, but no, he played the whole game, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
Dani Olmo, who has been injured so much, just really hasn't played. And Nico Williams, who, how can I say this? He's not somebody, certainly you wouldn't associate him with the Luis Enrique regime and even with De La Fuente because he's just such a direct player, right? And yet they looked really, really good.
Yeah.
That worked. And I find it interesting because obviously in a perfect world with Gavi and Pedri available and whatnot, those guys might not be on the pitch, or some of them wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, Nico Williams, I think you're absolutely right. When I've seen Nico Williams play, I think he's a sort of direct player, can be inconsistent at times, doesn't always get the final pass right, but he played well in that role on the left-hand side, chopping in onto his right foot. So he showed he could go past people down the outside, but also come in on his right foot and play crosses or play little 1-2s. Olmo, as well as I've seen him play for quite some while, I know he's had lots of injuries, but ever since I saw him in the under-21s, I think it was in Poland when Spain won the competition a few years ago, I kept on looking at him and thinking, come on, show me what I saw in those under-21 games. I never really saw it, even when, you know, I do a lot of Leipzig games, and being disappointed. I don't
think he features very big in Leipzig's plans either.
No. And then suddenly I saw more quality the other night, you know, whether it was a one-off game or whether he has got that ability in him. But it was a much better performance from him.
Right. Do we still have Brazil as favourites for the Copa America? Or do you put the world champions ahead of them?
With the front line of Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo and Rafinha, who played the other night, they're a side that are going to counter-attack, and they'll counter-attack very well. Are they good enough defensively? They've got one or two issues there, but I would still put them as favourites to win it.
And in Europe, how far down the picking order do you? I'm assuming Spain aren't favourites, but
no.
I have them high up. I mean, I think I have them top 3.
Yes.
Where do you have them?
Yeah, I would agree. Top 3 again.
Behind France and England.
Behind France and England. I know France didn't play particularly well over the course of the last few days, and England didn't get great results. But these friendlies, you can't always judge what the teams are going to be. Spain, I think, have a slightly more direct style of play than they've had previously. So they're trying to combine possession football with a bit more penetration, which is a good thing. Have they got the players, the very top players? Will Gavi and Pedri be fully fit?
They won't.
They won't. I mean, so I think that's a problem.
And I think also defensively,
yeah,
you know, at centre back or
the normal playing at centre back alongside,
or even Laporte.
Yeah, Laporte. That doesn't inspire me.
Nor does Unai Simon if it keeps going like this.
True. So yeah, I would put Spain probably 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, I think everybody's got. We can pick a ton of flaws. I think if you look hard enough, you find flaw with any team.
Yeah,
I think England and France probably have fewer flaws.
Yeah.
Although some might say the 2 managers might be the flaw. But the others all have flaws. But if you get hot in the tournament, then all that goes out the window.
Yeah.